Welcome back to the channel, guys. Gonna take you inside one of my dry fire sessions training for USPSA. It's the fall in Texas. There's a cold front. It's 5:30 in the morning, so it's cold, but I find that I get more focus in the time that my whole family is asleep. So I generally dry fire 6 to 7 days a week while everyone's still asleep. During the week, that's gonna usually be before 6 a.m. Now, it's important to have goals when you dry fire. So my goals for today is I'm gonna be continuing to work on my trigger press, and I am going to work on transitions and snapping the gun precisely from target to target, but then kind of gliding it onto the target. So I have a number of drills I'm going to work on. As far as equipment is concerned, I've got some miniature scaled dry fire targets I'm using predominantly today, the mini poppers from the Ben Steger Pro Shop. I've got some magazines that are weighted with dummy rounds. These do not have primers in them. It makes reloads, especially in high cap divisions, feel more realistic. I actually am using dry hands because I use dry hands in matches, so this stuff's available on Amazon. I'll throw a link in the description. It's great during the summer, although it probably isn't going to do much for me during the winter. And everything else is just my typical USPSA belt and my training gun. I generally start with about 5 minutes of trigger control at speed, so let's get started. Trigger control at speed is a drill from the Ben Steger Dry Fire Reloaded book. I've modified the drill slightly in that I not only pull the trigger as fast as I can, but I also try and reset the trigger as fast as I can. So I break a shot and immediately get my finger off the trigger. I don't aim at a target, I aim at a white wall, and I observe my dot movement, attempting to stabilize my dot as I do it. Now in this drill, I have the mini poppers about 4 yards away from where I'm actually standing. I don't know what their scale is, so it's not exactly an easy shot. I'm trying to combat my tendency to over-aim with the dot and take too solid of a dot, so I have a par time set at 3 seconds, which is a little bit faster than I naturally want to try and shoot these targets. So what I'm seeing with my dot is I'm not connecting on all of these. I'm pushing right now. I'm trying to move the trigger faster and move the gun faster off target and clean up the movement both in the trigger press and the transition. There is a good bit of movement, more than I'd like, on trying to pull the trigger this fast, so I'm trying to learn how to stabilize it with my grip. I'm also trying to transition precisely from shot to shot. So this is a good drill that forces kind of trigger discipline. Unfortunately not working on sight discipline since we're pushing speed. But this is not a drill from any book, it's just something I kind of did. Now this is just a wide transition drill. I'm working on trying to drive the gun really quickly from point to point precisely. I have a 5-second par time set, and the manner in which I'm doing it is I'm engaging the outside targets, then the middle targets, then the inner targets. So if you were to number them 1 to 6, that would be 1, 6, 2, 5, 3, 4 would be the order engagement. Just get creative, kind of mess around with it. This is based loosely off the Hopkins drill from the original Ben Steger Dry Fire book. It's not in the Reloaded book. So in this drill, I'm focusing on transitioning through my hips, moving target to target quickly and precisely, getting a good trigger press, making sure I'm feeling in my hands what I need to feel to actually control recoil on the gun. So I'm actually using appropriate grip strength. About midway through the drill, I realized that my trigger pulls were sloppy, and it was because my right thumb was not up in the grip tang like it needed to be. I wasn't putting good pressure there, so I was getting more dot movement than I wanted, so I made that adjustment. At this point, guys, I've been at it for about 15 minutes, and my forearms are starting to get a little fatigued. If you're not dry firing every day, you may have to work up to it because you can get a repetitive motion injury if you aren't conditioned for longer sessions of this. So I do about 25 minutes to 30 minutes every day, 6 to 7 days a week. So my forearms are in reasonably good shape to maintain that level of effort. But if that's not you, definitely work up to it and avoid getting injured. So in this drill, I've set up 2 arrays, 2 difficult targets and an easy target, and then 2 easy targets and 1 difficult target. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to transition the gun fluidly. I set a par time based around the more challenging one, which would be the 2 difficult target ones, thinking that the 2 easy target ones should be shot in about the same time, and that proved to be about the case. So I initially set the par time at about a 2.2 and ended up working it down to about 2 seconds by the time I was done with the drill. And in this drill, I'm focusing on my trigger control because if I don't have good trigger control, I'm not going to hit the little poppers. But I'm also trying to tune out all of the tension in my body, and I found that there was some tension in my hips that was causing the dot to bounce around in transition, so I kind of relaxed that. I tweaked my stance a little bit, moved my butt a little further back to sink a little bit lower, and that tended to clean up my transitions a bit better. There was some tension in my forearms because I was over gripping the gun with my right hand, so I gripped it appropriately with just the right amount of grip, making sure I had good contact in the grip tang. But just being aware of everything going on when I'm dry firing, not just going through the drill rote like a machine, but really each run feeling what I felt in the gun, what I saw in the dot, and then making adjustments on the next run. But trying not to think about doing the shooting when you're actually doing the shooting, just focusing on observing what's happening. Then after you're done with the run, critique and see what maybe was the cause of not getting the result you want. And then once you start getting the result you want, try and string them together to get like 5 to 10 good runs in at a time. You'll notice I also shoot the drill left to right and right to left. I think that's important. I wouldn't only shoot one way. I would get comfortable shooting both ways. And for my last drill, I just left up those 2 arrays and I just shot them moving left to right, right to left, and focusing on my trigger control, what I'm seeing in the dot. Started playing around with how much moving I actually needed to do. Some runs I did more moving, and some runs I focused on the shooting and didn't move as much, trying to figure out which was going to get me through them faster. It felt like and appeared that the shooting faster but moving slower was the more expedient way to do it. But I guess it would depend on the context in the match. But it's fun to just kind of mess around and see what you're capable of, trying to get low and creep through the position and not just move the dot, but actually focus on moving your eyes to the center of what you're trying to hit and then having the dot show up there on each shot. So there we go. So there you have it, guys. That is a typical dry fire session. I'll typically do 4 or 5 5-minute blocks of different drills, but sometimes recently I've been working on different skills. I'll actually devote like 3 10-minute blocks or 2 10-minute and 1 5-minute block, depending on the drill and what skills I'm working on. Today was the mini poppers, making sure I'm transitioning precisely onto a point in a couple different types of scenarios. And this is a pretty typical dry fire drill for me. So if you got questions, leave them in the comments and we'll have a conversation. Thanks, guys.